I'm David Hepworth. Thanks for clicking this Word in Your Ear podcast, videocast thing for which there is no name. Mark Ellen and I have been creating in this line since 2007. And if any of it has met with your approval, then please click to subscribe because it helps. Leave a comment because we like to hear from you, and maybe even consider becoming a Patreon supporter because then, well, you'll be one of us. Visit patreon.com/wordinyourear for details.
This is Word Down Your Way, in which those about to tour salute you.
Welcome to this, and someone that my teenage self first saw at the Southampton Guildhall in 1971. The glitter ball unforgettably radiating off his cape, which I'm delighted to hear it will be doing again when he tours in this autumn. Fantastic to see you. Lord Rock himself, Rick Wakeman. Rick, it's very nice to see you.
You can't, and you, Sig, you can't beat a glitter ball and a cape. There's nothing better, mate.
No, nothing better. You must have an enormous collection of capes.
I don't actually. I've got about 4 of the original ones, and about 8 new ones. Or I say new, maybe within the last 30 years, 40 years. Yeah, but I don't wear them around the house anymore because it frightens the dogs. I don't do that.
As it would. Well, look, we're going to get onto that tour in a moment, the current tour, but we were going to take you back to the first gigs that you ever saw. Can you remember some? You were growing up, West London, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was growing up Harrow and North Wembley area. That's where I was brought up. I mean, the interesting thing is about first shows. I was playing in bands from the age of 13. So most of the shows that I saw were, pub gigs and with the band or the various bands that I was in. I mean, I did go in later years to see some bands, obviously, when I started playing. But I was too busy playing myself than to go and see other bands. And also, being young and still at school, I had no money. So it was very hard to go to see shows when you couldn't afford the tickets to get in, even though they were cheap. I remember going to see when I was about 16, something like that, which has been 1977, something like that. 1975. I can't add up. Anyway, it was the Bonzo Dog Doodah Band.
Oh, right.
Oh, fantastic.
I loved the Bonzos, absolutely loved them. And
is that with all the exploding technology on stage, the whiz bangs and the?
Well, they had an exploding Viv Stanshall really more than anything else, because it was at a university in London. I think it was at the LEC, something like that. Anyway, and I wasn't old enough to go. I was 15 or 16, so I nicked my dad's raincoat. I always remember, and luckily I was already 6'3", but incredibly thin. So the raincoat made me look a bit bigger, and I sort of tried to look old, if you know what I mean. But it didn't really matter because they weren't checking on anybody when we went there. And I went with my mate Pete and Colin. I remember the two guys, Pete, and we went in, and it was really amazing because they were all set up. I talked to Neil Innes and to Legs Larry about it in later years, before we lost Neil, and they remembered it really well for this particular reason, that the Bonzos came on and started playing. So I can't remember what it was. I know in the repertoire they did the wedding of Mr. and Mrs. Mickey Mouse. They did that. I remember that, and a few all the classics. But they started playing, waiting for Viv to come on, and Viv came on, grabbed hold of the mic, and did a wonderful slant fall to the floor. And Neil said, "Well, he was paralytic," but that didn't finish the show or anything or stop it. He did the entire show lying prostrate on the ground. But it didn't matter. It was absolutely brilliant and very good musicians. I loved the band because they could all really play. You know, they were that's what I liked about the Bonzos, and I got to be friends with Viv in his later years of life, and actually did piano on the album he did for Charisma. And I mean, he was, what's the word I'm looking for? Mental in every respect. He, as you probably know, he used to go round some of the nightclubs in London with Keith Moon, and they dressed up as Hitler and Goebbels, or Hitler and Goering or whatever, and they went round and terrorised the clubs with. Oh, they were not. But
trying to imagine someone doing that today.
Oh, I know. They should, but it's no, you're dead right. You can't. I mean, you can't do. But they were amazing, and Viv was amazing. He was a very talented man. So that's the first show that I can truly remember. Going to see, and most of the other bands that I saw were in pubs in the Harrow area, who were, popular in the area, but nowhere else. I mean, I did see. Who did I? I can't remember. It's such a long time ago. But I did try and go to see bands whenever I could, but they were mostly bands that no one had ever heard of.
Did you, because you were playing in Northwest London?
Yeah,
I'm trying to think. Round about the same time, did you ever come across the young Elton John? Because he was playing it.
No, it's interesting. He was. You're dead right. I mean, there were a few around the area that I knew about, but didn't come across. I mean, that was the Who's area as well, of course, and that going down to Brentford, and I became very close friends with John Entwistle in the sort of mid to late '60s, which was amazing. In fact, it was John who introduced me to the Speakeasy in London when I was, again, well underage. Unfortunately, he buggered off with some mates, and I had no money, and I had to walk home to Northolt. But that's by the by. Other shows, do you know what? And this sounds really daft. I was thinking long and hard about this one. Because I was so busy myself playing and working with different bands and doing sessions, I didn't really have the chance to go and see concerts. And I didn't have any money. So you can all start crying if you like. It was very sad.
A little violin playing.
Yeah.
But Rick, what was the first time you appeared on stage? Can you remember that?
First time I appeared on stage properly, I was, how old would I have been? With a band, you mean, not just doing piano things?
Any kind of performance.
Oh, well, I from the age of 5, I was doing stuff on stage because my wonderful music teacher, Mrs. Symes, insisted that all of her pupils played in front of people. So there was, every month, all the parents used to come along and you'd play in front of the parents. So from the age of 5, I did that every month. And then a lot of festivals where competitions where I went along and played. First band one was, I was in a band with a great name called the Atlantic Blues, and they were absolutely rubbish. But it was, we weren't very good, but we had great fun. And the drummer who sadly recently passed away, who was a really, really close mate, he was in, as we all were in the band, in the Boys Brigade in South Harrow. And he ran the band for 3 reasons. One, he was the drummer because he used to take the drums from the Boys Brigade. So he had a snare drum and a bass drum and a cymbal. That was it. But it didn't matter. I mean, when you're 12, that's exciting. And so he had that. He was also a lot older than the rest of us, and he had a van, a Bedford van. He also, for some unknown reason, owned a Vortexian amplifier. So basically, it was his band. As a drummer, Ken, he was such a great friend. But as a drummer, he had a couple of failings. Main one being that he couldn't keep time at all. Yeah. It was just like all of those bands at the time. We used to do things like Wipeout, which finished 8 times quicker than when it started. We played our residency, which I did from the age of about 13 for over a year. was at a place in Neasden, which was a social club for Down syndrome kids and adults. Because back then, it was really bizarre. For some unknown reason, kids and adults with disabilities were kept away from the general public. They weren't allowed about, so they were brought along to this Nissen hut in Neasden High Road, and we played as the band. And actually, I learned a lot. I loved going there because, I mean, and I'll be brutally honest as well, which probably get me into trouble, but the first time we went there to play, we were all terrified. I mean, we'd never been in a position of socializing with Down syndrome kids and adults. And but we went, and a wonderful lady who ran it all, she said, come on, they're so looking forward to seeing you. So we went in, and they were absolutely wonderful. And I did that for over a year, and I learned so much about Down syndrome kids and about, that they're wonderful.
I'm sure that's wonderful. Yeah.
And it was, and it was amazing. And so that we did that every week. And we had a bass player who I think sadly is no longer with us. Say Ken, the drummer, is no longer with us. There was a guitar player called Alan Leander, who was actually quite good. He was like a Chuck Berry type of character, and he was he was a half decent player, but he and the bass player used to plug into the Vortexian amp with one speaker, and I was reliant upon the piano. Wherever there was a piano, I just played it. But we loved playing at the club in Neasden because they liked us. Nobody else did. Everybody else thought we were rubbish, and they were quite right. But the kids thought we were wonderful, and that was really good. And it was.
Oh, that's terrific. What about? Do you remember the first time you played with the Strawbs?
First, yeah, I did a session for them for BB Radio 2 used to have a Folk on Friday thing or something like that it was called. Right, yeah. And I got booked by Tony Visconti, who used to produce the Strawbs, to go along to the BBC to play the piano at one of their live sessions for Folk on Friday, and became great friends with Dave and the late Tony Hooper. And started doing a lot more stuff for them, and that's really how it got me into, because the singer-songwriter folk scene at the time was big. Everywhere had a folk club, and I suddenly got the call. I suppose for no other reason that nobody else was doing it. I used to get calls from a lot of the folk brigade to go and do piano sessions for them, which the likes of Ralph McTell, Magna Carta, Cat Stevens, who else? Al Stewart, a great American guy called Tucker Zimmerman. I mean, I used to get called from Colin Scott, and so I was became through that the go-to piano player for folk stuff.
Yeah. So I was thinking earlier, I remember you being on the cover, on the front page of the Melody Maker. Was it when you were leaving the Strawbs to join Yes? Was that 1971?
Yeah, it was. That's right. It was when I went from I mean, it was great to be on the cover of music magazines. In later years, I was more on the cover of the News of the World, but it was back then. Yeah, it was. It was after it was before I joined Yes, actually, the first one. Strawbs, we give Strawbs their credit. They were really one of the major first folk bands that went electric. I mean, there were a few there was Pentangle, there was all the usual, and Fairport. But Strawbs, we were a bit different because we had electric bass with John Ford. Richard Hudson played a multitude of percussion instruments, and he was really good, still a great friend. And I saved up and bought a Hammond L100 organ, absolutely loved it. It was great. I wish I still had it. It was a wonderful little piece of kit. And the folk clubs weren't keen on the Hammond organ. They didn't like that. I mean, it didn't go well with with all the sort of caftan coats and all that kind of stuff. It didn't go well.
You had to get it downstairs into the cellar, presumably.
In a lot of places, that's when you first discovered, whenever I can afford it, I need a roadie or a mate who can help. Because whenever it was time to lift the organ, everybody vanished. You were on your own with this. But the folkies didn't like it. They went, "Oh, don't like this. This is not pretty little 12-string guitars. What is this thing?" But on the other hand, there was a whole load of new people who embraced it. Who went, "Hey, this works." And the front cover of the Rivalry came about when we did a show at the Queen Elizabeth Hall,
Yes.
and we recorded an album called "Just a Connection of Antiques and Curios." And give Dave his credit. I mean, Dave said, "We're going to do the song that he wrote called 'Where Is This Dream of My Youth?'" And he said, we'll stick an organ solo in. And I said, "Oh, okay, great." And he said, "Do whatever you like." So we did this solo. We did it at a few folk clubs before we went to the festival hall, and which terrified. I mean, I think some of the old folkies sort of locked themselves in a room and just prayed. But it was great fun. And we did the show at the Royal Festival, at the Queen Elizabeth Hall, which Tony Visconti recorded. If I remember right, it's literally 3 mics hung over all of us on the stage, and we did it. And the album did really, really pretty well, but it got fantastic reviews, which was great. And the "Where Is This Dream of Your Youth" solo was mentioned, would you believe, in the Times, Financial Times, and the Telegraph. It was reviewed by a great guy, became a great friend later, Michael Weil, and
Right.
and the Melody Maker decided to, which was unknown to me till it came out, stick me on the front cover of Melody Maker with the dreaded headline, which normally is "A Kiss of Death," with "Tomorrow's Superstar" written over the top. And
God, how did you feel when you read that? That's chilling.
well, I was on a Central Line train going to Gants Hill when I read that. I was living in the bottom part of a house, a flat in Gants Hill, and what I used to do on a Thursday morning, which was when Melody Maker came out, I would come up to London on the train from Gants Hill to Tottenham Court Road, because Tottenham Court Road was the first place, the sellers out there, that had the Melody Maker. And I remember it really well. And I got off the train, went up, there was the Melody Maker, picked one up, paid whatever it was, a couple of bob, and then went back down on the train to go back home to Gants Hill. And I was sitting on the train. I know this might sound really daft, but I remember it really well. I didn't look at the front cover. I opened it first of all to see a review for the QE Hall that was in there, which I knew was being done. So I wanted to read that. So I opened it. So I've got the Melody Maker open, so that people sitting opposite me actually see the front and rear pages. And I noticed that there was quite a few people sitting opposite that were just like looking at it and then sort of staring at me. And I thought, well, I know I've got long hair, and and I probably had green PVC trousers on or something, and I didn't think anything about it. Oh, this is a bit weird. And then I think we got to about Leytonstone or something like that, or Leighton or whatever, and I read the review of that. Was good, and I closed it, and then I looked at the front cover and sort of went, "Oh, that's me. Shit, that's me." And then I felt really embarrassed, and
they all thought you were deliberately trying to draw attention to yourself.
Yeah, and I folded it up, put it under my arm, kept my head down, and then I think I got off a couple of stations too early deliberately and then got back on the next train that went in. I mean, I was secretly, obviously, chuffed to old boots, but I mean, it was not expected, and it was, and I suppose that started a lot of things off. And then suddenly, I did get to see bands because we were supporting big bands and doing festivals. So I got to see. I mean, those were the days when I think festivals were proper festivals, because there was most of them were 2,000 to 6,000 people. So you actually got to see the acts and you actually got to hear them. And they had yet to become what I call events. So it was, so with Strawbs, we were booked on loads of festivals. So I got to see a lot of bands that probably I would never have seen, and I used to hang around and watch everybody. I remember the likes of Atomic Rooster and Dido and all those. It was just fantastic watching all these different bands and how they were, and meeting guys. It was. Who
did you consider your rivals at the time? Did you think there was any that were particularly, on your patch?
Do you know, back then, I know this sounds daft, but we didn't consider anybody as a rival. We all felt there was, because it was just so exciting that there was space for everybody, and we didn't feel that there was anybody doing exactly what we were doing. Yeah, there were a lot of bands like Pentacle and say Fairports, and there were a few electric-y folk bands and things around, and other folk artists who were using electronic instruments and things. But they were all so unique that we didn't think of anybody, they're trying to copy us or we're trying to copy them. So we were all really good friends, and that remained all the way through. I mean, it was the same with Yes. We didn't feel that we were rivals to anybody else or anybody else was rivals to us. You just did what you did, really. I mean, it's only sort of in, I suppose, the 20th century, so 21st century certainly bred, we hate them, we don't like them. No, we never had any of that.
So one thing presumably nobody envisaged was that you would be still going out performing, hit albums from, 1973 or something, all these years later. Tell us about that.
I know, you're dead right. And if somebody had asked me back then what I'd be doing when I was in my mid-70s, late 70s, I'd say, I don't know, probably running a car dealership. I don't know what I would do. Not a clue. So it is amazing that this is happening. I mean, the one thing that is interesting is that we never had anybody to look to. Oh, what happens when we're 40? What happens when we're 50? What happens when we're 60? Because we were at the front of the queue. I mean, at least for bands and things now. I mean, my son Adam, who plays for Sabbath and Ozzy, and quite a few other people as well, Tony Hadley and whatever. He said to me, Dad, I mean, he's in his 50s now, and he said, Dad, when I started, people ask, what will you be doing when you're older? And he said, God forbid what my dad's doing. He said, but it's great. One of the nice things is there is no ageism. I mean, there's everything else, but there's no ageism. So it's great still to be playing. It's fraught with difficulties because I have arthritis and I have diabetes too. I have other health problems, but it doesn't matter. I mean, I wake up in the morning, throw back the duvet. If nothing else has fallen off, I go, it's going to be a great day, and enjoy playing. And I still enjoy listening to other bands. My one thing, I suppose, when I was going to see bands, famous or not famous, way back in the 60s, and so they all played live. There was no cheating, there was no computer stuff, there was no miming, and they were all fantastic musicians and great players, of varying standards. I can remember seeing good bands like Crazy World of Arthur Brown, who were great fun. There were every band had its own identity back then. which I think is lacking today. But I'm only saying that because I'm old.
Well, and
it's interesting. They all had a kind of brand. It's kind of true. Arthur Brown, we talked to Arthur Brown not that long ago, and he's still setting light to his brace. You're up there. And you Mark mentioned the capes and so forth. You kind of do these things at one stage in your career. And you're kind of saddled with them, aren't you, years later?
I don't mind. I mean, the interesting thing, it really came to light. I remember in the early 21st century, I was going back out to South America, and the contract was sent in from shows in Brazil and Argentina, and I looked at them, and there was one that said, Mr. Wakeman will wear at least one of his original capes throughout the performance.
That was in the contract.
It's in the contract, and I said to my manager, that's having a laugh. He said, no, it's for real. He said, I've spoken to Achilles, the promoter. And he said, the thing is that down there, in all the music magazines and newspapers, when they print a photograph of you, it's wearing a cape. So the young generation love prog rock. It's a huge prog rock market.
Yeah. And they won't recognise you if you're not wearing it.
Yeah, so you have to wear the cape.
I love the idea of the contract.
It's like Charlie Chaplin with the bowler and the cane. That's what people for.
That's interesting, because I lived just down the road from Charlie Chaplin for a few years. That's by the by.
So this show, Rick, the show that you're doing this autumn is. Go on, I wish we had time to hear about Charlie Chaplin. So this is the Six Wives of Henry VIII and also the King Arthur, isn't it? I think that you're doing.
Yeah, we did Journey earlier, and it really did go down well. It was hugely successful. We did these shows at the Palladium 3 years ago, and then we did Journey finishing off at the Cropredy Festival. We headlined at the Cropredy Festival and did Journey, and it was amazing. One of the difficulties has always been because I recorded them with orchestras, choirs, kitchen sinks, Ferraris, you name it. I've had a ridiculous amount of things going on. That becomes financially non-viable, to put it politely. So I thought, well, with a great setup of keyboards, and I want it to be live. And I talked to my son Adam about it, and he said, "Listen, Dad, with 2 keyboard rigs and the setup, we won't. We're not deliberately going to try and sound like an orchestra, but we can certainly do everything that the orchestra did musically." And I went, okay. And we did the choir at the Palladium, but that was difficult, fraught with problems. So when we came to go on tour with it, because I had 6-piece band and the choir. One of my singers, Hayley Sanderson, who is actually the singer for Strictly Come Dancing, she's great, a very talented girl. She said to me, "Can I have a word?" And I said, "Yeah." She said, "You don't need, you can't tour with a choir. I know it's financially not viable." And she said, "You can't pick a different choir up in every place because the amount of rehearsals needed." She said, "I can get you and deal with you 3 or 4 of the top class session singers who can do a fantastic job of the choir parts for you." And I said, "Are you sure?" She said, "I'm telling you." I said, "All right, go ahead." And she did. And it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So we've now got a 9-piece band that does everything, and it makes a lot of noise. And they're all phenomenal players. We've got a young drummer called Adam Faulkner, who is astonishing and such a really nice guy. I've got my guitarist Dave Colhoun, who is one of Brian May's favourite guitarists. Brian loves him. He's absolutely brilliant. Probably, I think, the finest prog rock bass player probably in the world in the current times, which is Lee Pomeroy. Everybody wants Lee Pomeroy. When I say everybody wants him, I don't mean they want to sleep with him or anything like that, but they want him to play because he is so good. My vocalist, one of the things about all of these pieces is that since the Palladium and before that, I've used girl singers, because girl singers have a much bigger range than men. And because I've worked with both, if you just have men, you're excluding yourself from any of the vocals that involve girls. So, but if you do girls, they can sing the men's stuff as well.
Yeah.
So what I've got, Hayley. Hayley said, look, she goes away on tour with Strictly and all that kind of thing. Strictly Come Dancing, and she said, you need Molly Marriott, who's Stevie Marriott's daughter.
Oh yeah.
So I met with Molly. Molly did the Christmas shows with us. She did the Journey tour with us, and she was magnificent. She was absolutely lovely. So she's doing the main vocals on the after stuff.
David and I were just talking before we talked to you about the idea that Wolf Hall might have given Henry VIII another lease of life.
Yeah, I mean, considering Henry took away a lot of lives, he has given himself a lease of life. Yeah, you're right. I mean, the whole Wolf Hall thing, that was great. I mean, Henry is probably, they'll be probably talking and discussing Henry in another 100 years' time. I mean, he's at least. I mean, he is certainly a very interesting monarch. And it's interesting that the historians talk about Henry VIII a lot, but the royal family don't. And that's like having the nastiest uncle you could ever wish for. He was an interesting character, to say the least, but fantastic to write about. Although the album was originally called King Henry VIII and His Six Wives, but I recorded the wives first, and then my engineer Paul Tregertha said, "We've got a bit of a problem, Rick." I said, "What's that?" He said, "There's no more room. There's no room for Henry." And I went, "Oh, bugger." So it became the Six Wives of Henry VIII.
Well, all that can be seen this autumn in Rick's tour. And who knows, possibly in the contract signed by himself and written by himself, he is required to wear his scintillating cape. Well, he will be doing anyway. Rick, it's been lovely to talk to you. Fantastic.